Hey folks, AshThingsentry.com. I'm going to talk about alginate impressions, particularly a few tips. One, we're going to talk about different types of trays. We're going to talk about how to take an impression, but tight little tips. So types of trays, tray adhesive. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of adhesive. I'd never heard of it before. And a couple tips on how to apply it to the teeth using either Monjic syringe or your fingers to obtain the best diagnostic cast that you can get. Then will increase the accuracy of your impression. So we have a number of different trays. There's thousands probably. Just brief ones in front of you. We mainly use metal ones. We can reuse them and they're stiffer. With alginate, we're trying to increase the amount of bulk. And when you remove the alginate from the mouth, you don't want to slow kind of, what we're trying to work with is plastic deformation. It's working against us. So when we're removing our alginate tray from the mouth, we don't want it to go nice and slow. We want to do a snap, so it's an immediate plastic deformation as the alginate material moves around the height of contour or any undercuts or whatnot, and then has that ability to snap back into where it was, the original impression position. So we have a number of trays. Like I showed the plastic one. This one does not have locks, but it has perforated rim locks, or cases trays like this, and also trays like this. There are different ones. I was going to say Superior, but these are both by Henry Schein. Now, one of the things, apart from these being maxillary and mandibular, one of the things I learned is that you see how thick the posterior portion, or maybe buttressing portion of this tray is. When you have a patient with tori, these are difficult to bend. Difficult to bend this out to be able to insert this tray into the patient's mouth, whereas these ones are a little more, they don't have as much metal support, so they can be bent a little easier. So there's rim lock. We have rimless, which is just sort of flat. These can be tough to use because if you engage, say an undercut, it'll cut it. I've done that before, and you really need adhesive on these. I mean, they kind of have these little grooves, but that impression material is going to come flying out of there, and then perforated. Now, one of the things that, and I just pulled up a study, one brief one is from a while ago, 98, and they were talking about tensile, shear, and cleavage bond strengths of alginate adhesive. Now, before I came to the residency, I'd never even heard of adhesive when used with alginate impressions. I still don't know how a resin epoxy can bond to something that's wet, but I guess the alginate dries and it bonds to it. So these guys found conclusion that alginate adhesive increases the bond strength of alginate, particular cleavage to stainless steel. So I've set up a little experiment here. We'll just see how that works. Now, cleavage, they tested, shear, tensile, and cleavage. Now, cleavage is a material's ability to resist forces that can pull it apart by separating two rigid surfaces. So what's suggested is using tray adhesive to minimize the amount of distortion when you remove the tray and retain the alginate in there. Now, there's a whole different types. I just wanted to introduce you to the idea of it. There's a spray type where you can sort of spray it in there. That's fairly thick, and then take a brush and then brush it around. Now, if you don't let this set, this needs to set for approximately 5 to 10 minutes, and set and then dry. If it's not dry, it acts, as Dr. Dre says, as a separator. So it's not going to act as an adhesive, it's just a liquid. So if you put your alginate material in there now, it's not really going to do much. And that goes the same with the liquid form. Just place it onto my pants, place it onto the tray, brush it on. You know, actually, it's easier. Honestly, it's just easier to pour some in. Not too much. And this is before you try your trays in. Try your trays in the mouth. Make sure they fit. Pour some in the middle. Don't use the same brush because that would be contamination. Remember, infection control. Use a different brush. Brush it around. Get it on the rim, and get it on the outside surface. And we're trying to retain and keep this impression as dimensionally accurate as possible. So let this set, because remember, again, this is just like it's a separator. It's a liquid. And you got to let it dry. So when it dries, after 5 to 10 minutes, then you can go ahead, and I've placed some in here. and you should be able to hear my finger. So there's that tackiness, and you can see it. Okay, so the last tip for this short video is a couple tips on applying the alginate itself. Now we have, I don't know if you've ever seen an alginator. This is an awesome thing to use. There's a whole bunch of different little products. Essentially just spins the bowl. There's water in there. Remember, powder water, baking. Powder water. So I've already pre-measured my water for my alginate. We're using chromophase, whatever alginate you use. This is neat. It's helpful because it changes color as it sets. So what we're going to do, I'll show you two techniques. We're going to do similar to like a pickup impression of this plastic model. So there's a couple ways of initially placing your impression into the patient's mouth. I mean, one way you can just fill the tray full and then boom, in it goes. Problem is you are inducing some bubbles, and I'll pull up the lid for that. Another way, what we typically, you can either use a monojet syringe that's cut off at the end, and then you'll see me here, we'll fill it full of alginate and then squirt it into the buccal vestibule and onto the surface of the teeth. And the least amount of waste technique is use your finger, grab a bunch on your finger, grab a bunch of alginate on your finger, and just wipe it all around. Okay, so let's just show this real quick. Powder to water. I haven't used the alginator for a while, so this may not look too pretty. So I'm just going to get this all mixed up here. So just some even pressure. Okay, and there's my mix. So nice and smooth, a little bit dry. So what we're going to do, place it into my tray. And you can see it's starting to shift colors already. From that pink to a white. Okay, so the first, then what we'll do is we'll show one way. So the first way that I was just talking about, using a monojet syringe, take the end off, gather up a bunch into it, and then just squirt. You'd be squirting into the buccal vestibule, just like that, and then onto the surfaces of the teeth. The other way that we also recommended is just take some on your finger and smear it all over the place, making sure you get into the buccal vestibule, onto the teeth, into any of those details, say the rest seat preps or whatnot, and then take your impression, and on you go. Now, depending on your philosophy, you can either leave it like this or do your border molding, get the patient to go through some excursive patterns. Everyone's got their own opinion. So that's just one way, or a few ways, just tips on using alginate. Alginate, we use it almost, okay, how about once a week, not every day. Use it often, and its accuracy is sufficient to reproduce for diagnostic casts, but also pick up impressions for border molding for distal extensions. That's a little iffy right there with prosthodontists in terms of border molding, but also for an impression for rest preps, and then a framework design for partial denture. Anyways, I hope that helps. Cheers.